Hi, and welcome to A Better Place. As you know, this is our series on love and relationships. Today we have a very special guest in the studios. Stay tuned, we will be right back.
It's a wireless system. Cable WTN. Go digital WTN. With local TV channel 10. Call and make a date. 542-5898. Down by Overseas Building, Ruby and Staff waiting. 48 channel, fasting with plenty more coming. News and sports from all over. Novella, Creole and Patois. Local thing is priority soon. Papi Menton, Taki Taki. WTN channel TV 10. We'll always be your friend. Check out the scene, we have the best rate. 542-5898. Hey man! WTN K1.
Hi, and welcome back to A Better Place. As I mentioned in the intro, we have a very special guest in the studios today as we continue on our topic of love and relationships. Today we have none other than Miss Anthea Guy. Anthea, welcome to A Better Place.
Angelique, thank you.
So Anthea, like you know, we've been having guests that been talking about love and relationships, and Valentine being just, you know, here with us. We want to talk a little bit about, you know, that topic, love, relationships, Valentine's. But before we do that, I would like you to tell the viewing audience who Miss Anthea Guy is.
Okay. By profession, I'm a psychologist, trying to retire, over 60, but still working. Right now, I still see some private clients, but I do a lot of consulting these days. I am also an artist, budding in the making in practice. And of course, a parent, have been married, have been there with the whole relationship of all kinds, different kinds of relationships. And very, very proud to be a local person, working with our local citizens. Yeah.
Okay, so you said that you're retired. You look like you're only in your early 40s.
Wow. Thanks for the compliment.
So you're retired, so you're no longer working. So you work, but it's basically for yourself now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your experience thus far being a psychologist working on the island, I guess with children, with adults, within the schools. How has that been?
Okay. Very busy, very hectic. We have a lot of needs, but I've been out of public education for several years, since the end of 2007. However, let me say, bringing it to our topic of relationship, that in working with parents and children, husband and wife, whoever the relationships are, even now consulting still, I work with businesses, so I work with managers and their employees. It's all about relationship. And I read something once that has stuck with me through the years, and experience has taught me that it's true. There is no place that we meet ourselves as we do in relationships. It really teaches us that you usually cannot say never. And that we each have a dark side, and sometimes we surprise ourselves, both good and bad, with the things that we end up doing because of love and relationships. Very interesting.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
I think we all can.
And it's so true, because there was this movie once, I'm sure you may have seen it, A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, you know, and it was interesting, that movie, because it really showed that, you know, how people go from being so in love in 1 minute to being totally, you know, against each other in the next. So I guess there's a lot of true sayings to that. Now, in terms of Valentine, we know that Valentine is celebrated across the world every year on the 14th of February, and it has become very, how do you say, it's popular, and everybody looks forward to it. What is your take on Valentine itself, the day, and what it means to people in general?
Okay. Well, Valentine's originally came supposedly from a 5th century martyr. And then that grew into all kinds. There's so many theories on the original reason for Valentine's. But I find it very commercialized. And a few years ago, it started being, I remember the first time that I went into a store in the States. I used to live in the States at that time, and saw a Valentine's Day card for your pet. That really cracked me up, and that was several years ago. So you could imagine now with internet, Facebook, whatever, we tell everybody now on Valentine's Day that we love them, some share gifts. So it's not only anymore a holiday just for lovers. But that's originally for many years what it was, mainly for loved ones. But now parents and children, friends, everybody tells each other. But the issue that I have with Valentine's Day is, well, I don't have an issue with it, but the thing that I wish people would pay attention to is when you're so busy focusing on your loved one, that significant other, how and when do you find time to focus on love for yourself, which is very, very important.
Interesting. You know, I guess, well, I've never thought about it in that way. So would you say that you think the value, because for me, it kind of boils down to valuing Valentine Day, because like you said, it's become so commercialized. Would you say that the value placed on it is too heavy then?
I wouldn't say that, but I think that there are a lot of couples who don't live good, don't pay attention on a daily basis to showing that love and appreciation and respect, and then try to make up. They put it very heavy on Valentine's Day. I would rather that people spend time daily, as often as possible, relishing the meaning of your relationship and how important it is to you, because then you would make less mistakes and be more likely to save your relationship and have an ongoing happy relationship than having to always make up with big days like this, you know, anniversaries, birthday, whatever. You come with a big gift and a big gesture when most of the time you're ignoring each other. But I also want to stress what I said about loving yourself, because one of the things that the average person doesn't think about and doesn't realize how important it is, you cannot give what you don't have. And if you have never been through probably years of therapy, self-help books, whatever, you have not learned how to truly love, appreciate, and respect yourself, it doesn't matter how much you want to give it to somebody else. You will end up, even if you have the perfect spouse, you'll end up messing up that relationship because you have never learned about true love, which starts with love of yourself.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. Basically, if you think that the whole day is blown out of proportion, and if it hasn't become commercialized, you've already said that you do think it is. And everything you've just said basically boils down to what I was going to ask. You know, if more emphasis shouldn't be shown throughout instead of just on that one day, because indeed, I believe that people they so look forward now to that one day that they forget about every other day. And I think we are so surrounded by love, and everything we do, there's love around us, that it really shouldn't be just, you know, focused on just one day, which is Valentine. What do you think about that?
It should not. One of the things, for instance, that I taught my kids when they were younger, especially when they started going off, the older ones started going off to college, is that we didn't have cell phones in those days, so the communication and Skype and all of that, the communication was not as often. But I always taught them in letters when we did speak, always to end with I love you, because I have taught it's something, I live with the idea of death every day, which is not negative as it sounds. It's actually very empowering. When you face the possibility of death and the fact that you don't know the hour or the minute or the manner, you tend to live more in love. You tend to focus more on making each day special. So I don't think that when people love each other, you really have the luxury for long periods of not speaking, punishing by silence, being mean, being vengeful, and all of that. Because you don't know what would happen to either one of you, and then somebody is going to be left with a lot of guilt and hurt feelings that we didn't have proper closure. The last thing we said to each other was not, I love you, have a nice day, a joke, something pleasant. And that for me is the main reason why people need to focus every day and every moment that you can as a human being on appreciating what we have, and don't wait. You know the saying, give me my flowers while I'm living. Don't wait until I'm gone to have a bunch of regrets.
Well, Anthea, thanks so much for what you've shared with us thus far, but we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about, you know, love and the true meaning of love. Stay tuned, we will be right back.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, Saba, and Statia, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Hi, and welcome back to A Better Place. So, Anthea, we're so much into this topic of love. Tell me now, what do you consider to be the true meaning of love?
That is very difficult to answer because there's a book called The 5 Languages of Love that we sometimes recommend to couples. And it explains basically that depending on how you were raised up and what you saw being valued and translated into "this means you love me" from your parents and significant others, you develop what you consider to mean love. So that question has to be answered by everybody. We are both women, and you know that in relationships, things you see other women putting up with, you would say, I would never do that. But for them, things that you're putting up with, they would say, no, I would never do that. So for each person, it's very different. However, I want to say that when I see people with problems in their relationships, and there will always be problems, that's life. And most people, you know, unless you're older and you've passed all the problems, we have issues. I tell people that you need to have in a relationship more happy days than not. When you begin to dread going home, when you begin to dread your spouse coming home, when you cannot look back and remember the last time you laughed together, you did anything fun, in spite of the burdens of everyday life. When you don't have a date night anymore, you don't have a family day, you feel you have nothing left in common. That's when you really need to start considering what is left of your relationship. What is it all about? Because even though we have struggles in life, love should never be not being able to be yourself and not being able to be happy and to be content amidst all the struggles, being very realistic. The old romantic idea of love that we're going to be happily ever after, you know, you see commercials, everybody's smiling, the baby is smiling, the dog is smiling. No, one teething baby and usually that goes out the window. So those of us who are more mature, we know that life will have its ups and downs and its struggles, but when you are no longer happy, you really have to question, because you should be happy no matter what. And there it goes back to the love of yourself. Yes. You should not allow yourself to be mentally abused. We all look at physical abuse, but what about mental abuse when I cannot be happy anymore? Your first responsibility is always to yourself. And speaking of that, we bring innocent children who cannot fend for themselves into relationships. Parents always need to consider that when you are not happy, no matter how much you try to plaster on a smile for the sake of the kids, kids know. Because children and animals and plants work on energy, which is the basis of who we are spiritually. Mm-hmm. And so we can lie verbally and we can try to lie with facial expressions, but our energy never lies. And if you are depressed or very unhappy, you need to know that you're doing your kids more harm than good by staying in that relationship. Or at least not trying to work it out, not being open about it and working it out.
Because I don't know if it's a lot to do with our culture, because you know, Americans seem to deal with it differently. So I think it's a culture thing where I realize in St. Martin, and I have to talk for St. Martin because that's where I've grown up, that this is where I know that a lot of persons are in relationships that are broken, but they stay. I don't know, for me, I say it's keeping up appearances. I remember this program I used to watch when I was in the Netherlands called Keeping Up Appearances, and basically what it was is that on the outside, this lady's house looked so beautiful to everyone, and you know, the neighbor, she was envied, but on the inside it was total chaos. And for me, that is how I sometimes want to view relationships here and say, you know, it's keeping up appearances, and I don't understand why, and I'm going to say we because I'm a part of this society, why we do that, why we want to keep up the appearances when we know that we are hurting, maybe the spouse is hurting, the kids are hurting, but yet for the outside we want to put on that mask. I don't know. Could you explain what that is? Is it really a culture thing in St. Martin? And can we ever get over it?
Yes, we can, because I think way back in the day, the States was the same when they were in small little, towns and villages. When you live in a fishbowl kind of community where most people know you, you have your set of friends, you want to always appear to have your life in control and things are good with you. That comes, it's just human. It comes from learning the way we are conditioned, that we get our value from what people think about us, the opinions of people, how they say. So we don't want to lose face. We don't want to feel like that person or everybody around us, since everybody's playing the same game, it might feel to us everybody has a good relationship. They have a few little problems, but mine is just, chaotic and dysfunctional out of the way. And that's not the way it is. And again, it comes back to self-love. When you understand how important loving yourself is, then you understand that going along just for appearances, but you're desperately unhappy, is a form of self-abuse, emotional and mental. And we don't need to do that. We need to be real. It doesn't help anybody in the end.
Okay. So my question was, it's a culture thing that, and it's how we were brought up basically, that will keep us in this cycle.
Yes, and at one time it was culturally all over the world. But as villages got larger and people became not anymore, your neighbor, whatever, then you don't care as much. And also people are constantly educating themselves to the value, to your self-esteem and your mental and physical health, to not remain in desperate, unhappy situations. People are realizing, especially with children, it doesn't help the children in the long run. It does more harm than good.
Because that is another thing that is a part of our culture. People will tell you, work it out, especially for the kids. They're going to be happy. They need their father and their mother in their lives. How do you explain that? I mean, is there some truth to that as well? That both kids need their parents, and regardless if the relationship is going bad or going good, that they should stick it out?
It's the ideal situation that we all would want. When we get married, we wanted a complete household for our children, but it doesn't work for the children in the long run, because all we teach them is to be hypocritical, not real, and not to stand up for ourselves. And we teach them that you're not entitled to be happy. You can, as long as you have the best appearances, you can have hell going on in your house. You don't need to be happy. And we need to teach people that you have a right to be happy. And you don't necessarily have to stay in a bad relationship or become addicted to drugs or workaholic, whatever, to avoid the fact that you are unhappy. So it does not help your children to be real, to live genuine lives. And it also does not teach them not to live in fear, that you can close one relationship and still there's hope to find happiness. And that people can be happy sometimes by themselves.
Well, Anthea, unfortunately, we've come to our second break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussions on love and relationships. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
It all came from one man's love for chicken and his secret recipe. Thanks to Colonel Sanders, today we can enjoy a new sandwich. The Boss from KFC, the best original Sanders sandwich ever. Now his original recipe of 11 herbs and spices is in the chicken, in the sauce, and sprinkled right on the bun. It's the best of KFC in every bite. That's why the Boss is the boss. So good.
When I say Xerox, I know what you're thinking. Transit fares, as in the 37 billion transit fares we help collect each year. No. Oh, right. You're thinking of the 1.6 million daily customer care interactions Xerox handles, or the 900 million health insurance claims we process. So it's no surprise to you that companies depend on today's Xerox for services that simplify how work gets done, which is pretty much what we've always stood for. With Xerox, you're ready for real business.
Hi, and welcome back to A Better Place. So, Anthea, we've been talking about love, and you've been giving quite some good insight as to what love means for some and what it means for others. Basically, what you're saying, it's for everyone, it's different. So tell me, we know that people say there are various forms of love. What do they mean with that then, that there are various forms of love?
Well, you have brotherly love, romantic love, familial love. which is usually mother and child, siblings, etc. There's different categories in that. You have love just for friends. You have friendship. And some of those friendships become very close that even of a friend people can speak of being a soulmate, for instance, you know, feeling as if I've known this person forever. Very important, we have unconditional love. And unconditional love, I personally believe, is a type of love, spiritual love, that we all as human beings come here, and that's one of the challenges, one of our missions, so to speak, spiritually, that we have to learn to love each other unconditionally, which is very difficult, much more difficult than it sounds.
Yeah, because for me, and I'm glad that you brought that up, the unconditional love, I would want to say that for me, I think unconditional love can only be had between a parent and a child, simply because as a mother, and I have that, I don't know if you've ever had it, and it's not only with my kids, I actually have it with my parents as well. If they hurt, I feel it. I actually feel the pain. And I've heard about it before until I started actually experiencing it. So for me, that unconditional love really exists and can only exist between that parent and a child. What do you think about that?
Okay. First of all, unfortunately, there has been many murders, for lack of a better word, of parents killing children, children killing their parents. So we know that it is not automatic. It doesn't have to be. And we also, I worked for years with so many people who have been viciously abused by their parents for most of their lives. So it's not an automatic thing. Also, unconditional love can exist between any two people or any person and their animal, for instance. It just means that you love them without conditions. And we have, especially in friendships, you see people who would give their lives, would stand in front of a bullet, can forgive anything, can really try to understand and be there. I think the reason why we don't see much proof of it, and we don't believe that it's so possible, so widespread, is because we confuse every other type of love with romantic love. And in romantic love, we do something very dangerous in that, at least in my opinion. We take love of another person and we put it before our love of God. We really, you know, we fall in love and we start, your parents don't see you as often, your friends say you're in hiding, you stop going to church if you used to go to church, whatever, our daily practice of how important. And I don't think that was meant to be. Because when you take somebody as so centrally your everything, when I listen to love songs, for instance, I just smile. You are my everything. I was nothing before you came along. I'm like, uh-oh, you're headed for disaster if you believe that. Because I firmly believe that we come here to experience ourselves and to grow. And if you put somebody that central in your life and believe that your whole happiness depends on them, you do two things. You put them before God and you're not going to grow. You're just going to become dependent. The other thing that you do is you put a serious weight. It's a block around somebody's neck because the responsibility for your happiness goes more and more on them. Right. And that just makes you a victim in the long run. It doesn't help you to become strong and grow as a person.
Well, maybe that comes back to what you said earlier about learning to love yourself. Before you can, you know, actually love someone. But how can you, for the viewing audience who doesn't know this, and for young persons, because I always believe that, you know, we have to guide and give the knowledge that we have as older ones to the younger ones coming up. How and what kind of advice would you give them to do just that? If they haven't been brought up in a household where they've been constantly taught to love themselves, how do they learn to love themselves?
Yeah, very difficult. You know, I have been saying for years when I see couples that come in for marital or relationship counseling, I always say people should come before they get married, before they go to live together, before they enter into this commitment. That's when you should come and find out about yourself, your personality, what types of personality would work better with you, and discuss things like how we're going to handle money and the mother-in-laws and, you know, the kids, the raising of the kids, and all these things that just throw our relationships off and cause us to argue a lot. So, but people need to start with themselves. If you don't really know yourself, and I firmly believe over 98% of us die and never ever have met ourselves. So if you don't know yourself, that wisdom you talked about, the older persons, us passing on to them, if I've never met myself and don't know myself, how dare I bring children in the world and then assume to teach them how to find themselves and how to find true love? And so what we do with a lot of relationships, we look for that other person to complete us. And no one can complete you but yourself. So we first have to work on ourselves. I read something once that always stuck with me. It said, instead of trying to look for Mr. Right or Miss Right, why don't you try working on yourself and become Mr. Right or Miss Right for yourself first, and then you will attract, law of attraction, you will attract that positive energy to yourself that you want in your life. If you are dysfunctional, you've come from a dysfunctional home, you've never worked out the kinks and the baggage, whatever, as I said before, you can get the most perfect spouse, you'll run them off after a while. The burden of them being responsible for making you whole, which is something only God can do, yourself, is going to become too great. When our happiness become burdens on our spouse, they run sooner or later. Whether it's just by cheating, they might stay in the house, but they run. We lose that connection, that we started with.
Well, Anthea, we are going to have to continue our discussion in our second part of this program, where we continue talking about love and relationships, because time has just flown away from us.
As usual.
And, it's such an interesting topic,
Yes,
and I believe that a lot of the viewing audience will get great knowledge from, viewing this program. So we'll continue informing them more in our second part. So thanks once again, and we'll continue our discussions in part 2.
Thank you for having me.
And to you, the viewing audience, I would like to thank you for having been a part of A Better Place. Stay tuned for part 2 as we continue discussing this interesting topic of love and relationships. I am your host, Angelique Rumu.